in the interim, we also brought in the intrepid reporter Dave Weigel of Semaphore. Dave is here on the scene for covering the DNC, but yet, Dave, we're going to have to talk about RFK Jr.
That's why I have this phone for. I mean, lots of things, but I was just texting people to try to confirm for the RFK thing.
Okay, so Dave, we reacted to the clip of Nicole Shanahan yesterday. Huge, obviously. But now RFK is slated to do a press conference on Friday in the state of Arizona. Donald Trump is going to be in Arizona. We have a quote here from Jonathan Karl. I will not confirm or deny that about endorsing Donald Trump. We're not talking about
RFK Jr. saying
this is RFK Jr. saying that. What's your reaction? Tell us kind of your what you're seeing, hearing, etc.
Yeah, they want to surprise people on Friday. We're going to see how many people speak about this, both what they announce and whether he shows up at this, I think, Turning Point Action event.
Yeah.
And nobody around this event is confirming, we're going to have an amazing moment. You're going to love it. They want some suspense. But that's clearly where it's heading. And Trump has already done what Democrats I was talking to which is saying that he likes RFK, would put him in the administration. They believe, their whole heuristic this year is these guys are weird. And they believe through lots of money and opposition research and media outreach, they have defined RFK from what he was before to a laughingstock. I mean, they had other words in my phone for him, but they really think that when people hear RFK, maybe whatever they thought of him 2 years ago, they now think brainworm, leaving a bear Central Park, conspiracy theorist will say anything, and they think that they could duct tape that to Trump. Now that is their take, which I think might be a little bit optimistic because there are a chunk of voters who hate the establishment that say, oh, well, if Trump brings him this guy, I'm interested, but they don't think that'll matter. That's their take.
All right. So what do you think? So the Democratic reaction, obviously, they're not happy about it. But with Trump himself, one of the things I'm interested in, because you talked to these guys too, they didn't want to do the quid pro quo deal with him for the cabinet membership. So what realistically can RFK get out of Donald Trump at this point?
Well, Trump already, the thing is, he already said he'd be interested in putting him in administration. So what are the follow-up questions? And Trump, unlike other presidential candidates, does lots of questions. He's I wouldn't say he's been baited into it. He likes it anyway, but they're doing more because Kamala's not doing it.
Right.
What are the follow-up questions? Where would you put him in administration? Do you agree with him on vaccines? You could keep going, write a list of things he would get asked. I haven't talked to a Democratic senator since this. I talked to some this morning. We're at the convention. It's not hard. They're everywhere.
Yeah, they are.
But a question for them is, would you vote to confirm this guy anything?
Yes,
and they'll probably say no.
Yes.
Because they think he's a lunatic at this point. But it becomes a series of questions, and it's 77 days. That's a lot of days. But every day you're spending on odd questions about a potential personnel pick is not a win. You're not nailing Tim Walz. You're not nailing Kamala Harris. You're saying, would we put this guy look at this clip of him saying something weird on a podcast 7 months ago? I might be mainlining too much of what Democrats are saying just because they were answering my text faster in the last 30 minutes.
And we're surrounded by them.
But that's they think because what would this look like? Would it step on their convention? It would be news that would come out of the convention, but they don't think it would be bad for them.
I could see Trump having a lot of fun actually, potentially with Kennedy, because I think Trump understands the Kennedy aesthetics maybe better than RFK Jr. does at this point. Like I could see Trump trotting him out at rallies and being like, this is a member of Democratic royalty. This is a Kennedy. The Kennedys are an iconic American family, and he can't stomach the Democrats.
Right. No, that's an argument Trump could make about it. And I have met, I know enough people who just don't like your audience, frankly. People I know who watch this show, listen to Joe Rogan, and they would take a second look at Trump if someone like Kennedy, who they think is honest. I mean, I read YouTube comments. I'm not sure why, but you do see just people who are not maybe in the mainstream media discourse hear him and think, this guy can't, if he's saying all this, he must be honest. There is no politician that talks like this. He would have an outright with, I think you're right. He would have that with logic.
And I mean, empirically too, Dave, he is drawing votes away from Trump. Like
at this point, yes.
At this point, it's just crystal clear. Like we see it where he was at 12% or whatever, drops down to 5%. Almost all the Democrat disaffected is going back to Kamala. So for Trump, like it's a problem. And it would be smart for him to make a deal with it.
Yeah, Democrats have been dug in against him. They never thought they thought, I think, for the last couple weeks that he was hurting Trump, but they still thought it was an X factor. And right now, they're in a good mood right now, obviously. Right now, they're thinking we can put together a 2008 coalition. Who cares? We don't need to slice off votes for him. But they not up, but also the only money being spent for Kennedy by a party was Republican donors funding a PAC, not Restoration PAC, a different PAC in
America
Pennsylvania.
First PAC, right?
Some of that, but there's one in Pennsylvania that was saying direct mail to Democrats and saying, "Hey, Democrats, RFK is on the ballot. He's a great Democrat. He's progressive. He's pro-choice." They're still, and maybe they were just behind the times, but Democrats have been convinced for a long time these guys are just not gettable, and their coalition. I mentioned those voters. They're not getting Joe Rogan voters. They're not getting like the working class people, guys undecided about this. They are getting college educated liberals who like the Kennedys but think this guy is bad, and so they just don't talk to these people anymore.
Go ahead.
Curious for your take. I just think they're totally missing it. Like I think Democrats I think Democrats are wrong that this could significantly help Trump at the margins. If this is another election that's decided in a handful of swing states by 150,000 votes or 200,000 votes total, and it moves 5% is a lot.
I agree.
Now,
it's
no, that's 5% and falling. So by the time if he stays into November, he might be at 2 or 3% by the time that all comes around. But 2 or 3% is enough in 150,000.
And I was talking to other Democrats, not today, but before, who were joking, but joking with intent that it'd be great if one of our rich people started sending mail to guys who with like NFL channel subscriptions, saying you're gonna love RFK Jr. But in the context that they thought they had to pump him up. The X factor is how popular is Kamala Harris by the time we vote, because that's I think what I'm talking about. Their giddiness. The other thing right now is her favorables. This is unprecedented. Are up. At somebody at this point in her life in American politics is now 6 to 8 to 9 points more popular, more favorably viewed than Trump. Walz is favorably viewed, and it's not a double hater election anymore. Right now, it's not. It is an election between a Democrat who's about as popular as Biden was in 2020, a little bit less, and Trump, who's more popular than ever, but 42%.
Right.
And they think in that, 50%, that's it. We just go and convince everyone who voted for Mark Kelly in Arizona, everyone who voted for John Ossoff in Georgia, those people just come back. You know us. You know Kamala Harris. You like her, don't you?
So talk to us. So you've been around now, the Democrats, the narrative of joy and all that. We personally, there's a lot of Republicans who are saying it's fake. I don't think it's fake. Being in the arena, there's a lot of unity. So what do you think the strategy coming out of this? You're a member that you have a lot more access than we do. What is the reception about finally taking some questions, the interviews? Because that's been the most frustrating part for a lot of us. No interviews even scheduled now at this point, and the lack of press availability. Are they just giving Stonewall? What's the plan around it right now?
They're stonewalling on that. They're also stonewalling on just if they just put her policies on their website. I was just talking to some Democrats in more competitive races. They're not worried about running on her anti-price gouging or aid for first-time home buyers. They think they can defend it. I mean, I talked to some candidates in close races who said that's great. It's meaty. I can talk about it in some speech. And they're being super cautious. They really are. The Trump critique that they are just trying to run play a movie, run a vibes campaign. It's right, and Democrats are in a very "what are you going to do about it" mode. I mean, they you can't force us to take questions. Right. It needs to get toxically bad. The other thing they're doing a little bit is waiting out some bad narratives. Had she done an interview on day one, she would have had to answer Medicare for all questions. Had Walz done an interview on day 2, he would have had to answer National Guard questions.
Right.
And how long can you make that old news? I think that's misguided. I mean, because I see that at this convention. Josh Shapiro, for example, one example, he's been asked about 1,000 times. Do you think it was anti-Semitism, the reason that you're not on the ticket?
Yeah.
He's answered it similar ways 1,000 times. These stories don't die. People want their own sound. They want their own clips. So they will get this. And they're I don't think they're terrified. It's not like Hillary Clinton being worried that every press conference is going to be emails and servers and why do people distrust you? But they're not even scheduling a TikTok influencer who's going to softball Tim. They're not doing any of that.
They're not even doing that. That's
and
the
they just
amazing
think
thing.
they don't need to, which I don't think is right now.
Well, what's your sense of actually our colleagues in the press, especially people that you spend a lot of time with when you're kind of walking around the convention area and that? Because with Biden, when he wasn't doing interviews in 2020, the anger from the press, I think, actually really did push the Biden campaign, forced their hand. Do you get the sense that that type of anger is going to start bubbling over the surface to the point where Kamala Harris is forced to start doing way more press?
Yes, and who forces her? But there are some quasi traditions that should be happening right now. The Time Magazine thing. If you still care about print, I still care about print. it is weird to get the cover without an interview.
That's insane. That's objectively crazy.
Around a convention, the old tradition was there's a cover, it's both tickets, and they did their Trump interview in the summer, they did their Biden interview. There should have been a Kamala Harris and the ticket, and they do both. I don't know. I don't work at time. I don't know if that's being negotiated. Probably not. There should be a 60-minute sit down, another quasi. I mean, these are like the Biden the Super Bowl interview.
Absolutely.
It's not in the Constitution, but you usually do them.
Exactly.
And I think the Trump storyline, which is consistent, that she is just loopy and she can't defend her policies, that has stuck a little bit. That's why they're taking more questions on the tarmac, taking any, which is that mollified things. I guess to back it up, the reason you're not seeing people saying, when the hell is this going to happen, is Biden was locked up and not doing anything for weeks at a time in 2020. The fact that there is a clock that restarts every time she goes out of the bus, takes 6 questions, and they answer the news of the day, and the Trump campaign bats it around, that, I don't know how many hours, it starts the clock, and for a few days, you don't hear about that.
Yeah.
I don't think that could last. If they go through the week after the convention, no interviews, that would be okay. Seriously, though, you're not going to deal, because then you start to leave questions for the debate, and you leave moderators questions like, do you want, for the first time, you have to defend a complicated policy to be on a debate stage with Trump? Maybe it goes well. Maybe it doesn't. You'd rather get that through in a news cycle with Leslie Stahl or somebody.
That's an interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ryan.
It is an interesting point that this comes after months of Biden either being unwilling or unable to do serious press availability.
Yeah, sure.
And to the extent that he would do them, the only questions that we would get answered were like how cogent he was that day, not, what his actual defense of this particular policy was. And he's not even the one running anymore. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's a different problem, because she can give bad answers, she can give good answers. Biden just was not giving good answers to anything. We don't have to go through it again. And every question was on the frame. No one's going. I can't speak for everybody. People are not going to walk into a Biden interview and say, Americans think you're stupid and you're drunk all the time. What's your answer? That's not the overall impression. There's not 80% of people telling pollsters they think that. That's Trump strategists on Twitter saying that. That is not how people think of Harris. You poll, most people think that she's competent to be president. They don't have those problems. So there's not a good reason to not put her out there. And if you've interviewed her, I haven't in a while, really, since she was running for president. But she can overtalk things, but so could Barack Obama. I mean, but Barack Obama could give like a long professorial answer, and it was weird. It would go somewhere that it was usually more. He would land someplace boring, not weird, typically. But
right, and
she
loops around, which is her problem. Whereas, and you can watch her looping around and get stuck in the loop. Whereas Biden,
return on investment.
Biden might meander. I'm not Biden. Sorry, Biden.
Obama.
Forget about Biden.
Yeah.
Obama would kind of meander, but it would, when you transcribe it, it's still a paragraph that was like making a coherent point.
Yeah.
Hers, they don't look crazy, but that's a good way to put it. That she knows the point she wants to make, and she thinks of something that she should add to it, but then she goes back to make the first point. It's just people learn different.
They just
rhetoric
over
their I mean, this is why Tim Walz speaks differently, because he was a teacher, and he was like being a teacher for years and years and having that kind of rhetoric versus being a district attorney and making arguments in courtrooms and
we're going to tell the jury 100 times.
So, I don't think it's like a crippling problem, but she rambles in a different way. Yeah.
Dave, what I keep hearing from the Trump people is honeymoon. We're going to kill him after Labor Day, and I'm like, well, it's it's kind of a long time.
It's like voting starts. It's like 2 weeks.
Voting starts kind of soon.
Yeah.
I don't really understand why
the Minnesota
wait.
Early vote that starts insanely early.
Okay, so what's your assessment? Is that cope that I'm hearing from? It's definitely true that they're going to kill her after Labor Day, but is it cope in that they just don't know what to do? Like a lot of the stuff is not sticking.
A little bit of it is cope, because I'm very forgiving. Even when I talk to Democrats, they just we never thought this would happen. There was a reason so many Democrats are saying we need to open a convention because we're worried that Kamala is unpopular and she'll never. Who gets more popular after being vice president and becoming the candidate without anything happening? Who would have, if you had any of us or talked to a Democrat and said, hey, Kamala's going to have a rally with 18,000 people, we wouldn't have believed that. So the Trump world is still adjusting to that weird reality. The part that's not cope is they have their ad spending, and it's not getting discussed very much, because what gets in the discourse, who knows. If you watch their actual paid media, it's all here is a criminal that Kamala let out of jail, here's a criminal that crossed the border, here's a grisly story of something that happened, it's her fault. They do have these clear messages of crime and the border. The COPE part of that is that they've been running them for a month and they haven't really done damage yet. Her favorables have gone up, but that's why you keep running them. I mean, so I think they're not wrong that you get out of the convention, you're going to have more questions. Why is she doing an interview? And you're just going to have more and more people clicking on YouTube. And the pre-roll ad is a terrible crime that she let happen. Or they have their own polling. Everybody's polling says that the urge people to donate to the Minneapolis Freedom Fund is a killer.
Yep.
They do think, and I think they're not crazy. If you just keep repeating that, people are going to know. Democrats spent 9 months talking about Project 2025, and then it really only clicked once Trump made a weird comment about how he didn't know who was behind it. But if you ask Democrats 4 months in, it was fair to say, like, why are you still doing this? This is not clicking. So I think it's not COPE. I think it's more money. It's the old, like, Stephen Sondheim talking about West Side Story, and they told him it wasn't hummable. And he's like, well, then MGM spent $10 million promoting it. All of a sudden, it was hummable.
Yeah, good. That's a good. Any last? Do you want to talk about the squad? Are you willing to do that with us?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so there's an interesting clip. Producer Matt, can you pull this up? Ilhan Omar this morning at a protest taking a swipe. It looks like at AOC.
Should we, Mac? Do you have AOC's original?
I just put it in, so we can play that first.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Let's first let's hear from AOC. Let's hear the original comment about Kamala working tirelessly for a ceasefire. Then we'll go to Ilhan. All right, Mac, cue up AOC. Let's go ahead.
Carter, let's intro it again without the instructions.
Sure. Yeah. So what this is that this is AOC. Here we're looking at a schism opening up between AOC and Ilhan Omar. AOC on the stage, main stage, first night of the convention, says that Kamala is, quote, working tirelessly for a ceasefire. Ilhan Omar then taking a shot at her at a subsequent protest that just happened today. We're filming this on Wednesday morning. First, let's take a listen to AOC's comments. Let's go ahead.
And she is working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire in Gaza and bringing hostages home.
All right, working tirelessly, bringing hostages home. Now let's bring up the Ilhan Omar reaction that we just heard today that was actually at a protest. There we go. Go ahead, play it.
It's been unconscionable for me in the last 10 months to witness my colleagues in this administration refusing to recognize the genocidal war that is taking place in Gaza, to not see the mothers who have lost countless children, the babies whose dead bodies are being dug out, to not understand that working tirelessly for a ceasefire is really not a thing and they should be ashamed of themselves.
Okay, so what did you make of that, Dave? Because that was, some intra-squad violence. There was a lot of talk after the AOC thing. They're like, oh, she's a good Democrat. She's doing well. She's very much on the team. But Ilhan, taking a shot at her. They're saying my colleagues suggesting this.
Yes, and I was at that presser, and she jumped to a van after that. But the questions were generally about that, and she did not want to. Everyone in the squad's aware how things can just become intra-family feud things with no content.
Yeah.
But that was a choice, because they're negotiating for more both policy and at the convention itself. They do not want the offer at the convention to be, well, Bernie and AOC and Biden all mentioned you, and so we're good.
Right.
And the answer from other Democrats, they're just, the evolving answer today was, if we get a ceasefire, this goes away. Like, they're serious about it. The arms embargo talk, that goes away. But she was speaking, because that was a presser with the uncommitted delegates. Cori Bush was there. I'm not sure if she was in the background. Mm-hmm. And yes, that is a break. She doesn't want to make it personal, but that is a, please, you and the media do not say that they have fixed this problem because of what they gave us at the convention. Please be like me, more cynical, and ask more questions about this. It's a very inside-outside thing that they are doing now, because they have a lot of press. I mean, you saw there, probably 50, 60 people at that, some foreign, but a lot American. And Democrats are this happened in 2016, where there was less and less attention over the course of the week to Bernie people and what their demands were. And they know that could happen. So they're trying to just keep this in the bloodstream, continue to, if you see AOC, ask her this. If you see Bernie, ask him this. Do not let them go off stage and then say, all right, well, what about the balloon drop? New story.
Well, both of you, actually, I'm curious for what you were hearing on this, as to whether Ilhan Omar is speaking for other members of the squad adjacent people. We talked to Greg Kassar yesterday, but hadn't seen this yet, obviously, because it hadn't happened. But do you get the sense that this divide between Ilhan Omar and AOC is going to be deeper than just these two people, because here's a good tweet from Daniel Lobo. The gap between Ilhan Omar and AOC will widen as AOC's larger political ambitions become more clear. So is this about those two, or is this about AOC versus the squad at large?
Well, if you're thinking of a four-person squad, Rashida Tlaib has not endorsed Kamala Harris.
And she's not the convention. She was on the list of a Michigan.
Oh, I didn't know she wasn't here.
She was I was at the Michigan breakfast today, and she was on the list, and she didn't show up.
She's just taken a much lower kind of cable news profile, so you don't hear as much from her. But clearly, like, she's with Ilhan on this. Ayanna Pressley obviously has ambitions like to be Massachusetts senator or something like that, and
she was the one who did endorse Warren and not Bernie.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Not a bitter split, but that was one of the splits.
So Ilhan also posted this on Twitter, which I think Dave's phrasing of it, "This is a choice," is good. Like she went out, she used the word tirelessly to reflect exactly what AOC said, so that it would be clear that she's talking about that moment and specifically saying that you should not use what AOC and Bernie said to take the pressure off Kamala Harris. So the way she tweeted it is, Vice President Kamala Harris has an opportunity to demonstrate our party's courage and commitment to ending the genocide, not just in condemning it with words, but in action by conditioning aid. A better world is possible, but we must have the courage to fight for it. And then she puts the entire clip of her speech at this presser up on Twitter. And her longer argument is, the reason I find this to be ridiculous, she says, is that if you're working tirelessly for a ceasefire, all you have to do is stop sending the things they're using to fire, and then the firing will cease.
Yeah, you don't need to get tired at all. Just stop doing it. You can do it in 10 minutes.
You don't even need ghost energy.
Hey, any last thoughts, Dave, from things that you've just observed around here that I haven't asked you about?
No, the meta question of why they're cool with what happened is interesting, and I keep thinking of metaphors that probably don't like do the whole business, but it really they were lying to themselves for so long. I mean, they were just lying to themselves. That they don't say I'm lying to myself, but lying to themselves that Biden was going to beast it out. It was not a problem. He was going to have another good debate. And you saw flashes of that when he spoke Monday, and the first 30 minutes were fine. And you already talked to some Democrats who had a flash of almost like somebody reaching, like, well, I haven't had a drink in 10 years, but this is a spritzer. I'm fine. Really, they were just, and I'm not trying to indict everyone, but they were just dishonest about how Biden could win. And the reason they're so joyous, I think, is they are now being honest with themselves. Not that Kamala Harris will fix everything, but they really did. I mean, I talk to delegates all the time who, they loved Kamala in 2019, and they were just hoping that someday she'd be better at this. And they were all in. They never really wanted Biden. We all lived through 2020.
Yeah, absolutely.
His constituency, people who did not want him first, but thought they had to settle for him. And this is after, what's the long view of this? 2016, half of them had to settle for Hillary. 2020, half of them had to settle for Biden. This is the first time they said a candidate who is not hobbled running against Donald Trump. We didn't realize we could do this, and we were not being truthful with ourselves how much better this would be. We've not filled arenas in years. This is great. Yeah.
The catharsis
the dual arena thing, that was a flex. We have got to be honest.
Oh yeah,
big flex from Democrats. Dave, thank you for stopping by, man.
Oh no, great.
Thank you. We really enjoyed it, and appreciate your analysis.
So interesting.
I'm gonna go get more sunburnt. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Take an energy drink for the road.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.